अपने ख्यालात से हमें नवाज रहे थे। अब मैं जनाब प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर शफीक अली खान साहब से, डॉक्टर शफीक अली खान साहब नेशनल कॉलेज के एक्टिंग प्रिंसिपल भी रह चुके हैं, प्रोफेसर हैं इंग्लिश के, पॉलिटिकल साइंस के। तकरीबन 19 किताबें मुख्तलिफ मौज़ूआत पर पॉलिटिकल साइंस की लिख चुके हैं। और मैं एक बार इनके यहाँ गया तो मैंने शब्बीर अहमद उस्मानी साहब पर एक किताब देखी जो इंग्लिश में लिखी थी उन्होंने पाकिस्तान मूवमेंट के हवाले से। तो मैंने फिर इमाम अहमद रज़ा खां फाजिल बरेली का जिक्र किया, इनका मैं नहीं जानता, मुझे कुछ वाक़ियत नहीं ज़्यादा। तो मैंने फिर किताबें दी ला के, उसके बाद इन्होंने उसका मुताला किया और फिर ये मकाला तैयार किया है। मुमकिन हो कि इन मकालात में बाज़ तनकीदी नुकात हों, लेकिन मैं समझता हूँ कि इन्होंने काफ़ी मुताला करने के बाद जो नताइज अक्स किए हैं उनमें से बहुत से नताइज से हम सब मुत्तफ़िक होंगे। तशरीफ़ लाते हैं जनाब डॉक्टर शफीक अली खान।
जनाब सदर, वो असल में जो किताबें मुझे मौसूल हुई थी उसके बाद मैंने एक किताब लिखी है, दी वलीउल्लाही मूवमेंट एंड इमाम अहमद रज़ा खां। आई एम रीडिंग ए चैप्टर आउट ऑफ दैट बुक एंड द समरी ऑफ द चैप्टर. The chapter is comprising 30 pages. I will read only the summary of the chapter. एक सेकंड। हाँ ठीक है, ऑल राइट। इमाम अहमद रजा खां ऑफ बरेली and the Indian politics from 1880 to 1921. Summary. The impact of Imam Ahmad Raza Khan on the Indian religio-political scene from 1880 to 1921 is not difficult to assess and recognize. He entered the arena of Indian religio-politics at a time when the Indian Muslims had not recovered satisfactorily from the trauma of the revolt of 1857. They had neither reconciled with the English regime nor had developed their own institutions except Darul Uloom Deoband, which was working for the organization and preaching of Puritan Islam as propounded by Shah Ismail, a colleague of Sayyid Ahmad of Bareilly. As early as 1880, when Imam Ahmad Raza was only 24 years, he received, in reply to a question, he replied. The question was whether India was Darul Harb or Darul Islam. He declared that India is Darul Islam, which was manifestly a contradiction of Shah Abdul Aziz Fatwa issued in 1803 declaring India Darul Harb in the light of the then religio-political situations. Imam Ahmad Raza Khan, right from the beginning of his career as a scholar, was opposing Wahhabism or Wahhabiyat and such other non-conformist sects. Shah Ismail wrote his famous Taqwiyatul Iman in the light of the interpretation of Islam as furnished by Abdul Wahab of Najd. Ahmad Raza Khan first of all came in conflict with the Wahhabis who wanted to purge Islam of all unwanted innovations and thus consciously deprived Islam of its original spiritual and moral luster. Ahmad Raza Khan wrote a lot to prove that Wahhabism was against the letter and spirit of Islam. Ahmad Raza Khan and his followers opened another front against the so-called jihad movement launched by Sayyid Ahmad of Bareilly and Shah Ismail. As a matter of fact, they argued the latter were inspired by the rulers of the East India Company who exploited them to destroy the Sikh regime in the Punjab, as proved by later events. By annexing the Sikh territories with the company's dominions, the Britishers wanted to save their northwestern territories from any possible Muslim attack from the northwestern India. The Britishers knew that India had always been attacked in the past, or the Muslims trickled into India from the northwestern side of India. By exploiting Sayyid Ahmad and encouraging him to launch a so-called jihad, the East India Company rulers played a double game. To wit, on the one hand, they weakened the Indian Muslims, demoralized them, and on the other hand, got rid of the Sikh regime once and for all. Ahmad Raza Khan came in conflict yet on another point with the Deobandi scholars. Maulana Muhammad Qasim Nanotwi, in his famous book entitled Tehzirul Nas, maintained that after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the possibility of the arrival of another prophet could not be ruled out. But he would not be as perfect as the last prophet was. This malicious interpretation of the Quran divided the Indian Muslims into two warring groups, one which sided mostly the Wahhabis with Maulana Nanotwi, and the other who opposed it. Maulana Rashid Ahmad of Gangoha, by means of a fatwa, maintained that cooperation with the non-Muslims in all fields other than religious is allowed. It is why just after the inception of the All India National Congress, a good number of Deobandi scholars and teachers joined the Congress and followed the anti-Muslim, secular and territorial policies of the Congress. Later on, it became a permanent political attitude of the Darul Uloom to play the second fiddle to the Congress, which culminated in their opposition to the demand for Pakistan. Just contrary to it, Ahmad Raza Khan opposed the Congress, its leadership and policies, which were manifestly against the Muslim interest. The Muslims did not believe in any sort of Hindu-Muslim. The Maulana did not believe in any sort of Hindu-Muslim unity. He opposed such illusory concepts tooth and nail from the beginning to the last. Both Rashid Ahmad Gangohi and Ashraf Ali Thanvi preached that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had no knowledge of the unseen, ilmul ghaib, and that evil God could tell lies. Maulana Ahmad Raza Khan and his followers eloquently maintained that, number one, God cannot create any other Nabi or Prophet just after the last Prophet, because there is or was no such will on the part of God to create yet another Nabi. Number two, God cannot and does not tell the lies. Three, the institution of prophethood has been terminated once and for all in the illustrious person of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Number four, God had blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the unseen knowledge. And then the Barelvi scholars rightly held the opinion that Maulana Qasim Nanotwi was guilty of providing juridical support, Fuqahi Jawaz, to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani to introduce a new false religion. Ahmad Raza Khan was fully aware of the miserable economic conditions of the Indian Muslims and offered a practical solution of their economic problems and miseries. He, as early as 1912, projected guidelines to help the Indian Muslims improve upon their economic miseries. He emphasized as under: one, the Muslims should shun litigation and save their money. Two, the rich Muslims of Calcutta, Bombay and Madras, Rangoon should try to open banks for the Muslims. Number three, the Muslims should purchase from and sell only to the Muslims, as the Hindus have been doing their economic dealings only with the Hindus. Number four, the Muslims should prefer Islamic education to all other activities. This economic progress program was further explained by the followers of Ahmad Raza Khan from the platform of the All India Sunni Conference, which was founded in 1925. Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi, a prominent Deobandi scholar, despite his religious differences with Ahmad Raza Khan, agreed after all with the later on his political policies and programs. For example, number one, Ashraf Ali opposed the Hindu Congress and the movements launched by it, such as the non-violent movement. Number two, like Ahmad Raza Khan, Ashraf Ali also did not believe in any kind of Hindu-Muslim unity. Three, Ashraf Ali believed in the separate and distinct nation-political and religious identity of the Indian Muslims. Number 4, he believed in two-nation theory. Number 5, Ashraf Ali and his friends and followers supported the Pakistan movement enthusiastically. Number 6, he opposed, like Ahmad Raza Khan, the Qadianism tooth and nail. Besides, Ahmad Raza Khan and his followers opposed the nationalist Muslims. Maulana Ashrafi, along with the Barelvi scholars, opposed the secular, territorial and Western nationalism of the Congress and its concept of one Indian nation. The services of the All India Sunni Conference towards the cause of Indian Muslims and the All India Muslim League are immense. The conference, with its multiple purposes, served the cause of Sunni Islam, Islamic education, Muslim politics, and economy in a worthwhile way. It countered the Shuddhi movement, kept the prestige of the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam, opposed the Gandhism, and condemned the nationalist Muslims for their un-Islamic beliefs and practices. The All India Sunni Conference held its regular annual sessions at important places from 1925 to 1947. The conference, each and every election, sided only with the Muslims, and its followers and members cast their votes only in favor of the Sunni candidates. The Barelvi religio-political thought, as fundamentally propagated by Ahmad Raza Khan, was opposed by the Wahhabis, a host of Deoband scholars and nationalist Muslims scholars and their followers on various grounds. But the Barelvi scholars and their followers efficiently countered each and every objection point-wise from the point of view of the Quran and the Sunnah. Some of the critics, like Wilfred Cantwell Smith, mistook the Barelvi movement and its founder Ahmad Raza Khan as the movement of Muslim villagers, illiterate Muslims. But he should know that now many scholars in the West are doing research on the works of Ahmad Raza Khan and the religio-political movement launched by him. It is very unfortunate to mention that the controversy between the Wahhabi and the non-Wahhabi is raging for more than 100 years. With the passage of time, their differences have widened, so much so that now they regard each other as non-Muslims. It goes to the credit of the Barelvi scholars that they started reforming the Muslims from the lowest strata. They brought the Islamic message to the illiterates, the poor and the ignorants, and helped them improve upon their moral, spiritual and economic conditions. The illiterate Muslims who were prone to the Hindu culture and religious influences in small towns and villages were saved from becoming apostates and atheists. The performance of the Barelvi scholars in various walks of life should be judged from the point of view of their unbounded love and reverence for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, rather than from any socio-political standard of leadership and values of culture. It will also be futile to judge their performance in history from any socio-political expediency, as was the case with the Darul Uloom scholars, who were more inspired by so-called rational reformative spirit than a genuine urge to purge Islam of all unnecessary incrustations upon it. The desire of the Darul Uloom scholars and saints to preach and organize Islam from such a socio-political point of view as to prepare the Indian Muslims to help bring about political revolution to count the Britishers is not to be underestimated in any case. But their followers, instead of seeking the help and cooperation of their brethren in faith, relied on and put their faith in the non-Muslims who cheated them later on. The Barelvi scholars of religio-political thought apparently emerged as a reaction against the overgrowing and ever-growing rational come Wahhabi thought of Darul Uloom Deoband. Had there been no Taqwatul Iman, there would have been no Barelvi school of orthodoxy. But as a matter of fact, Ahmad Raza Khan himself was an original thinker of Islam. He interpreted and practiced it in right earnest in the light of the imperatives of his conscience. Wahhabi Islam has organized itself in various forms and phases, institutions and organizations in the subcontinent. They were given a tough fight only by the Barelvi scholars. It was only this school which stood for the protection and preservation of the dignity of the Prophet Muhammad, of the prophethood. It popularized Islam and the life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam amongst the illiterate and uneducated Muslims. It founded many schools and where Islamic teaching were imparted as recommended and supported by the Barelvi school of thought. It launched a crusade against the Hindu and the Hindu Congress. In the Hindu imperialism, it resisted the socio-political influence of the national Muslims. It gave a full-fledged economic program to the Indian Muslims. Last but not the least, it provided the Indian Sunni Muslims with a religio-political platform to voice and ventilate their grievances and face their rivals. As a matter of fact, in the post-mutiny period, 4 main institutional movements sprang up to lead, guide, and redeem the Indian Muslims. The first was the Darul Uloom Deoband, whose various aspects have already been described. The second was the Aligarh movement, which was opposed by the Darul Uloom stalwarts on account of its founders' pro-English attitude and the modern secular education which he introduced over there. The third was the institution of the Nadwatul Ulama, which was also opposed by the Darul Uloom scholars. It was mainly a literary come historical school of thought, which later on developed into an institutional form was that of Ahmad Raza Khan Barelvi. The services of all the 4 movements towards the cause of the Indian Muslims are on record. What pains a serious and sensitive student of literature and history is their superfluous differences, which with the passage of time started assuming fundamental import. The Darul Uloom Deoband, when adopted an anti-British attitude, was logically bound to oppose all those institutions and movements which differed with it even slightly. It grew up as an anti-Aligarh, anti-Nadwa, and anti-Barelvi movement. The founder of Nadwa, Shibli Nomani, on account of theological and academic reasons, hated Darul Uloom. The Aligarhians, without indulging into any religio-political wrangling with anybody, moved forward to achieve their goals. It was only the Barelvi school of thought which found many opponents from amongst the Muslims, but they were dealt with properly by its followers. Only the Aligarhians and the Barelvis were flexible, accommodating, and compromising in their respective movements. Both of them were pro-Muslim League and zealously served the Pakistan movement as against the rest of the Muslim institutions and movements. Thank you.